My name is Brian Reeves, and I am honored to serve you as president of Mmea. Members of our board of directors and staff have spent the last year dreaming, sharing, thinking, and planning. The result is right here in what we hope you will find to be an extraordinary array of high-quality professional development, the kind that has consistently made this conference one of the finest in the country. On behalf of the Missouri Music Educators Association, welcome to your 81st Annual In-Service Workshop and Conference.
I'd like to just talk a little bit about how I connect with my students. My goal of teaching every day is to connect with them as a human being, to treat them like human beings, adults, and to connect with them on a human level. So I try to talk about my successes and my failures. I try to share parts of my life with them. I want to make sure that they know that I struggle with life just like they do. It may be different because I'm old, compared to them, but we share something together and we have to make it through as a team. So we talk about teamwork from day one, class one. We talk about high school from day one, class one in 6th grade. And we start to just connect as human beings before we can connect musically.
I think it's really important to have a routine, like a starting routine at the beginning of all of your classes. And so the kids, I teach it pretty early on that when that bell rings, we're playing probably within the first 15 seconds. And so they know that they need to come in, get their instrument together and get their stand in place, and that within the first 15 seconds I'm starting. And if I don't quite have everybody, then I'm still going. And then those kids that are kind of straggling behind, they learn pretty quickly that they've got to get in there. And it usually works out pretty well that the kids get in there quick enough and we can get started. So I would just say, just get in a routine right at the beginning of class so you can use all that time you've got.
Hi, I am Brandon Boyd. I am the chair of multicultural music for Mmea, and I think this year's conference is going to be spectacular. One of the things about multicultural music that I think is very important for teachers, either in private sector or even public sectors, I think that teachers want resources, and I think that's what Mmea's responsibility is to teachers, is to provide resources so that teachers have the necessary tools to walk into a classroom and teach a music that might not be a traditional music or a music that we learn when we study in college or in graduate school. And I think that is our mission. Our mission is to make sure that those resources are simple enough and practical enough that we could find some aspect of that music to teach to our students. This upcoming conference will highlight music of the Brazilian music tradition, and we are hoping to have Elisa DeCaney, who is a professor at Syracuse University, who will give us two perspectives. She and her husband will hopefully be here with us, and they will provide us with the instrumental aspect of Brazilian music along with the choral aspect and looking at the Portuguese language, which I think is the most scary aspect of Brazilian music. But when you have scholars and practitioners like Dr. DeCaney and Professor DeCaney, those people come to this conference to help make that music practical and easy for us to understand and then to duplicate in our classrooms.
What I'd like to talk to you about today is volunteering. I want you to get active and get involved in not only your local chapters in terms of your district, but also state and also your discipline organizations. For instance, MBA, MCDA, Southwest Division ACDA, and even larger throughout the nation. The payment is $0, to be honest, but the payment I would ascertain is intrinsic. Not only is it intrinsic to you and your family, but also to all of your students. As you gain relationships, you gain contacts, your web grows, but also so does your knowledge base and your experience level that you can take back to your students. It's extremely fulfilling. It's a lot of hard work, but it is definitely something I'd like for you and encourage you to do. You can do this. You can do any job that's available. When you sit around in your district meetings and nobody raises their hand or nobody nominates somebody for any position, raise your hand and say, I'll do it. Even if you don't know what you're doing. You can figure it out, and there's plenty of help in this state to help you figure it out and help you better serve your district and serve your state. So please consider volunteering for whatever positions are available, and when somebody asks you, simply say yes.
So I'm here to talk about student leadership. You know, that's one thing that I've actually personally not done a very good job with in my 10 years of teaching here at Lindbergh. But we've been working and striving to get a little bit better at it every year. Some of the things that we have done, especially in the recent years, to get our program better, get our students better prepared for life outside of school, and get them feeling like they're a real part of the program, is to incorporate some chances for them to contribute through leadership positions. Right now, our band president runs entirely on his own, 36-hour music-thon. He gets all the students involved. He talks to all of our students about it, not just band, but choir and orchestra as well. And then there's sometimes students outside of all those programs that are involved in music and some other ways around the community that get involved that way. Our vice president usually helps out with things as well. And we've started ramping up our student leadership through workshops, bringing in clinicians to talk to our student leaders. We have a buddy system where all of our incoming freshmen are set up with juniors and seniors that kind of act as a mentor for them. And I think especially with a program as large as ours, it allows those students a chance to feel like they're individually getting some help from somebody that knows what they're doing, that's been there, that understands how the program works and can help guide them through it individually. So I think it really gives the students a sense of ownership in the program, and it gives them a sense of some leadership practice and kind of a contribution throughout the years. So that's kind of what we're doing with leadership, and if you're wanting to vamp up your leadership program, feel free to contact me in any way.
One thing that I think most people need to understand about jazz is listen. Listening to jazz is the single most important thing that I try to teach my students. You cannot really accurately read the music that we have in our big bands and in our small group combos and understand exactly what swing is or what the jazz style is. You have to go to the source. We are so blessed that we have this thing called YouTube, that there is so much free materials that are all over it. that we can just go to any day of the week in class. I can put it up, I can show it on the smartboard. The kids can do it on their phone. Listening is the key to everything that I do in my classroom.
The biggest thing I think that helps me as a band director is making sure that you have organization within the organization. Many times I've struggled, and I can track that back to not having things planned out, or maybe I didn't have a vision of where I want to go with a certain ensemble or something like that. So I really am a big promoter of where do you want to be. Assess yourself, assess your school, figure out where you want your ensembles to be, where you want your program to be. Administrators will appreciate that. Your students will definitely appreciate that. And that's going to help your performance level as well as your numbers. It's going to help build your program that way. I also am a big proponent of making sure that you understand where your program fits within the entire school community. Be an advocate for band, that's our job, but we also need to be an advocate for our school and understand that band is one element of the overall educational package that the district provides. And so what are we doing to enhance all of education, not just band?
One of the things that's very important to me is that music is a vital part of a well-rounded education. For years, people have talked about how music contributes to other subject areas, have talked about its role in test scores and increased brain functioning. But I think there's a more important way in which music is really a basic subject. It provides students with experiences that build critical thinking, empathy, collaboration, and innovation. And when I think about today's world, while literacy and numeracy are important, there's so much information that is available at our fingertips, but being able to interact with people, being able to critical think, are really a basic part of education, and one that I think that we should speak more directly to in advocating for music education. These are certainly the skills that are important for the workforce. At the same time, however, many times our schools, in particular our policymakers, are very focused on test scores and very narrow measurements of achievement. One of the things that we can do is to be very involved in speaking about music education with policymakers. It's very important that they hear from us, from a wide variety of people, about why music education is very important. So one of the things that I think is very important on an ongoing basis is for us to communicate with our elected officials about why music education is very important. I'd like you to imagine, for instance, that if every school board member had to answer two important questions: do you support music education, and how are you going to support music education? That would do a world of good for our students and our profession.
I'd like to say something about building community in your music ensembles. I think it's something we've built at Parkway Central and over the years, but to me it's really important to make everybody feel valued in that ensemble, from the very worst clarinet player to your all-state musician. Everybody needs to know that they have a place in that ensemble and they have a responsibility, and the most talented students have to be dedicated to the whole group and not just themselves, because a lot of times you'll find that there's kids that need your ensemble maybe more than you need them, and that builds a esprit de corps within the ensemble. It also builds a home for people that may find the only place they're really accepted is in your music group. So if you use their name, you know things about them, you help connect them with each other, and get everybody to lock arms in building, working towards a common goal, which is an outstanding musical performance, but it's not at the expense of people. It has to be because of the people that are in the ensemble.
I feel that in a time and in a place where our country is at the moment, that music education is now more important than ever. We've become isolated in our hyper use of social media, and music education is a place where our children have the opportunity to collaborate with one another, to experience a sense of community, to develop skills such as empathy and kindness and caring, all through music education. And whenever we are sending our kids out into life as adults, we want them to possess those traits as empathetic adults and as kind and caring and compassionate individuals. And what better way to practice those than expressing oneself through music education?
Both experienced educators and educators who are just new to the field often come in with a sense of maybe not being fully prepared for what they face on a day-to-day basis in their classroom. And one of the things that I've learned through my research on community partnerships is that that is actually totally okay. When we embrace the fact that we don't know everything and we can't provide our students with every bit of information that they might ever need and every resource that they could ever want, that puts us in a situation where we can reach out to our community partners. Through building community partnerships for your own classroom students and your own program, you can provide your students with access to resources and experiences that the community might have to offer, but those would not necessarily be accessible to your students if you hadn't reached out. So take a minute to brainstorm what you wish you could give your students in your music program. What experiences do you wish they had? What connections do you wish they had with folks in the field? And brainstorm ways that they might get access to those. Who in the community that you are immediately situated in has access to that? Honestly, it could be access to an auditorium for performing space. Maybe somebody else in your community has that. And then start to think about what you have to offer. What does your program and your students have to offer those people in the community, and how can you trade those resources? That's the basis of developing a really strong community partnership.
So just a few words about the benefits of music education, and in the short amount of time we could be here for a long time. I appreciate the fact that research tells us how students involved in music education or music do better on test scores, standardized testing, and their grades improve in their other classes, and that's all good stuff, and we're happy that those kind of effects happen by involvement in music. But I think there's a whole other side of this that goes just way beyond those enhanced grades and enhanced learning capabilities that music gives us in other areas. And those are kind of things, we talk a lot about just the creativity aspect of music, and I'm not talking about just improvisation. I'm talking about just any piece of music that we have and that we do in the band, choir, orchestra. And we hand it to the students, and then we ask them to take that very complex system of codes and symbols and directions that's on the page, and we ask them to turn that into something that gives a concept, an idea, expression. We turn those kind of things into something that only music can do, which is an emotional content too that gives an idea or a concept meaning. And I'm not so sure that we give students or they have an opportunity to do that in other subject areas. Well, in fact, I know they don't. For my students, when we start to rehearse something, I ask them as they look at their music, I ask them, do you see notes when you look at your music? Or do you hear music? I want them to hear music. I don't want them just to see notes. I want them to take those notes and then give that meaning through just how they interpret all that complex code. Like last night, Graham Hepburn was talking about that interview he told a story about when he met his wife to some younger children, and I don't know how young, they must have been very young, and then he played several examples of music, and something like The Entertainer or whatever, and the story was about how they met and how they fell in love. And then he finally played the theme to Love Story, among other examples. And they go, oh, well, that's the one. That expresses, that explains this, or helps define this story. Well, these kids were way too young to have ever seen the movie Love Story or know anything about it, because they had no exposure to that at all. But the music, on all those different examples, that one example of music to them helped define and put meaning to an expression to his telling of the story and what that meant to him. So just some things about creativity. Collaboration. Oh my gosh. Students have opportunities to collaborate on several different levels in other areas as well. But, you know, with us, within music, there's this sensory input, both with what they're hearing, what they're seeing from us as conductors, with this nonverbal communication. We're collaborating without the spoken word. They're reacting to what they hear, what they see, through directions that we've given them and what to listen for and how to react. So that kind of collaborative process is very important, and that goes other places beyond just music as well. Then critical thinking, we hear that term a lot, but it really does. I know for me, that's been something that has been a big takeaway from my experience in music as well. You know, reacting to that interaction with all those different people through that collaborative process, and then processing and synthesizing that information that they get on a very high level. That kind of critical thinking process and the assessment piece that they're dealing with constantly is, to me, is a huge takeaway from what we do. And then I guess there's just, I guess this happens in other places, but for music, just that determination and just that sheer grit that we ask of our students constantly about, well, let's try that again, but this time, maybe if that wasn't so successful, what if we did this? What if we tried this? And then we come back the next day and we start the process over, because that's what we do. And I know that's kind of that kind of hard work, that kind of dedication, that kind of discipline has served me well through my life. So, and that's a takeaway for me on music education in a big, big way. So again, just some other things I think that the benefits of music ed that are way past just enhanced test scores and enhanced grades. So just some thoughts.
Today I wanted to talk to you guys about an important part of our approach in our program, which is perception is reality. For us, we think about our performances, and most directors, I believe, think about their performances a lot. And you talk about how it looks to the audience and how it sounds to the audience and the way that they perceive what you're doing. But one of the things we don't think about is the perception of our students in our classroom. When we're talking about our students in our classroom, there's a big difference between telling people to do something or giving them the opportunity to do something, or asking for volunteers. And I think a lot of teachers find that in band class, but when we look at things, managerial tasks and things that we might use to make our program better that have to be done but aren't necessarily music related, we give our student leaders the opportunity to show their ability to succeed in those ways, as opposed to telling kids to move chairs or fit uniforms or do whatever or load the truck. We find ways to make students successful in a variety of ways, using things that have to be done anyway. And the perception is reality. If you are telling someone to do something, and that has to happen sometimes, it's a lot different than if you say, does anybody know how to fit uniforms? Does anybody know how to line a field? Is anybody good at mowing? Is anybody adept with loading things or playing Tetris, I guess you could say, with the truck? You find volunteers pretty quickly. Sometimes you may have to give a little bit of a Huck Finn kind of thing, like, well, I'm not sure if you could handle the responsibility of loading the truck. But usually just asking for volunteers is going to find a lot of success for you. You've got kids in your program that are hungry for the opportunity to prove themselves. So giving them the opportunity to do something is a lot better than telling a kid who's not interested in doing it. There's always an opportunity for students to grow, and when they succeed at small responsibilities, it lets you know who you can and can't count on to take on larger responsibilities.
My name is Janae Maley, and I am the Missouri NAFME-C president. For those of you not familiar, NAFME-C stands for NAFME Collegiate, so we are the membership option for college students. So if you are a college student wanting to teach music education in any capacity, this is the group for you. While you are pursuing your education and learning how to be a future music teacher, there's a lot of opportunities for you to get involved. But this opportunity, I'm going to say, is one of the most important because it connects you to a network of educators that you can learn from and become mentors later in life. This organization has provided me with the opportunity to do amazing things and meet amazing people all over the nation. One of the biggest things that we focus on is professional development, networking, and advocacy. If your university has a local NAFME chapter, go ahead and join it, and if it doesn't, you should email me and we can set one up so that you and your fellow music education majors can join NAFME.
Just a little bit about mentoring and MMEA's kind of initiative with that for our new in-service music teachers. You know, that induction piece or induction process of the new teacher into the classroom is a pretty daunting task, especially with all the responsibilities that music teachers have and they have to see to. As someone that trains music educators or helps undergraduate students with the process of becoming teachers, we're very aware that we can't show or teach or tell them everything at the university level. So Mmea has started a very helpful, we hope very helpful process of assisting these mentors as they're in that first and second year of their teaching job, as they're processing into full-time and in-service teachers. And we have several different programs that we offer, a fall kind of retreat, if you will, for that after like that first 5 or 6 weeks of school. They can come to us, they can talk about some classroom management ideas. They can talk to us about with people in their own discipline area, talk about how do I handle this, what do I do about what's some better ways to see or approach this process of whatever it is they might be teaching. And we've just found that that connection helps with our teachers, and we've tried to track them as best we can, and we found that there's better retention, or there has been some better retention due to some of these processes and some of these methods that we've used to outreach and reach out to those students, those new teachers, if you will. Those processes continue for Mmea, and if administrators in our schools throughout Missouri would like to be a part of that, all they have to do is just contact our Mmea, either president or vice president or mentoring chair, president-elect, our mentoring chair, and then we'll help them with the process of getting those young teachers, those new teachers involved in our mentoring program here with Mmea.
One thing that I want to encourage educators to look into is just making sure that you talk about and sit down and look at your year at a glance. A comprehensive approach to the entire school year. Get out all of your resources, the literature that you would like to look at, the ensemble that you have broken down, the classes, the number of rehearsals you have leading up to the different events that you have going on. This comprehensive approach and this look at your entire year will allow you then to plot out what you need to do when you need to have it done, and then to work backwards from the time that you start those rehearsals until the time that performance is happening. This will help us break down all those experiences and to make sure that our daily work that happens in the class is something that is efficient and effective for all of our students. Once you've done all of that, then go ahead and weave in all of those intervention and enrichment opportunities that our students have, such as honors ensembles and college auditions, whatever it may be, so that they're plotted out, and then make that resource, that year at a glance, something that's available for your students and parents to look at so that they know what's happening in the course of your curriculum and your content area for the entire year.
I would like to talk briefly about the importance of music advocacy in our field. Certainly every music educator advocates for their program locally, whether it's with the parent group or the administrators, school board, and the importance of keeping music alive and strong in their programs. But it's rare that music educators reach out to the state level or even the federal level and advocate for the same students and the same programs. And there are opportunities for that. We have many things at the state level that we ask music educators to support and talk with the legislators and policymakers regarding keeping music and education an important part of our well-rounded education system. What I've discovered, before I made my first trip to Jefferson City or to Washington, D.C., it was something I was not familiar with and quite frightened to go speak to policymakers about something that I was passionate about. But that was really the key. I was passionate about it and I wanted to, I just didn't know how to. So the first thing that I discovered is important is to make an appointment with the policymaker, the senator, the representative of either the state or the federal level. You call them on the phone, you usually talk to a staffer or an aide in the office, and you explain who you are and what you would like to talk about and a day that you're going to be there. But they'll give you an opportunity to speak to them. Sometimes it's a 15 or 30-minute block of time. What I've discovered, a couple of things about that are very helpful. Number one, if you take students with you, it is so helpful because those policymakers really want to hear from the young people. They want to hear what it is about music that inspires them and keeps them coming to school every day and what they want to do with music in the future. Another thing that I think is important is that you're prepared to have some talking points. Even if it's just 3 or 4 things to discuss with them, it provides a little clarity. I believe it's important that you have a leave behind with them, a copy of the talking points. With Mmea, we often leave CDs of an organization, one of the ensembles that performed at the most recent conference that represent their district. And they always appreciate that. If we don't have someone that represents their district, we'll leave them an all-state choir or band or orchestra CD. And it's just a token of appreciation. They can't be expensive gifts. I think they have to be under $35, and a CD would be. It's probably important to understand that you know more about music education and the importance of it than most of the senators and representatives that you're going to talk to. You are really the authority on this topic, and if you present the situation and the information or your requests, what you're asking for, in a good way, they are more than happy to listen. And finally, I think the thing that is often forgotten is that repeat visits are important. You're trying to establish a connection with these folks in Jefferson City or in Washington, D.C., where they recognize you and they know what you're going to talk about. Repeat visits mean that you're sincere with what you're asking. I've discovered after my 4th or 5th time in Jefferson City that people recognize me and they're happy to sit down and talk. When you take students to an advocacy day in Jefferson City, it is such an important part of educating them how to request things, how to talk to policymakers, how to be an advocate for something that they're passionate about. This last March, I took 5 students from my high school and I gave them each a talking point to discuss. I let them choose. One of these students had a special needs sibling. Advocating for music education and the equitable use of it with students with special needs was one of our talking points, and so that person was very happy to talk about it. And it was very sincere because it was connected to them, and we had several senators and representatives glad to talk to them about it. That experience was really useful because those students were introduced to the House of Representatives by a representative from our district. It was a really unique and interesting moment for them. I think it's something that they'll never forget. Advocacy for what we do is an important part of our daily work, whether it's local or state or federal, and I can't overstate the importance of it. I hope you'll be involved.
Privileged to be a small part of Mmea. My first experience with Mmea occurred when I was an undergraduate at the University of Missouri in Columbia. I knew nothing about Mmea. I didn't know what it stood for. At that time, the conventions were held on the campus, in the music facilities at MU. And it didn't take me long to figure out, even though the organization was a lot smaller than it is now, that it was a very important aspect of music education in the state. And I quickly learned who the leaders were. I learned about the emphasis that the organization put on various levels of music education and teaching. And in short, it motivated me and inspired me in those early years, and has continued every year to my present year, where I'm retired after 45 or 50 years of teaching. I'm still thinking, all right, how would I explain this to a group of 10-year-olds or high school students? How would I prepare this piece? And having just recently retired from community band conducting, and this is all very fresh in my mind, and I have relied on Mmea and the leaders and all of my colleagues to help prepare me for the various challenges. It's a super organization, and I'm just thrilled to be a small part of it.
Well, I'm in my 23rd year of teaching orchestra from grade 7th grade all the way through 12th. And if I was to communicate to anybody that's starting or anybody that's in their 30th year, I would say outreach to other directors from across the state and beyond when it comes to resources and questions that you might have. In my beginning of my career, we did not even have the internet at the time. And with the internet now, you can connect with people so easily. And I'd highly encourage anybody to go outreach to me if you'd want to, or anybody after the next few years to MOASTA, Missouri American String Teachers Association, and email the president, vice president-elect, because we've got all emails that we can connect you with any string teacher throughout the state of Missouri and beyond, in case you might have questions in regards to repertoire, how do you teach certain aspects, but even more importantly, if you wanted to go to the MOASTA, or even more importantly, the American String Teachers Association Facebook page, request that you become a member. Tell them who you are, what you teach. Within every hour, there are people who are posting questions from what literature should I program for grade 5, or what beginning book should I be using for a strings class that starts in 3rd grade or maybe 7th grade. And you'd be surprised, within seconds or minutes, you'll get tons of great positive responses on how to find those resources and how to make your program better, and how to become a better teacher. So I encourage you to search the web, search us out with MOASTA web.org, or look at the ASTA or MOASTA Facebook page and make those connections. You'll be glad you did.
Today I would like to talk to you about the use of language in the general music room. It's important to give thought to how we say things, and in fact sometimes how we say things is more important than what we actually say. Our tone of voice and body language have a lot to do with our students getting our message. The first example is to put rules and directions into positive language. So instead of saying, "Don't hit the xylophone so hard," you could say, "Please play the xylophone gently." The first example, the student heard, "Hit the xylophone hard." And in the second example, hopefully they heard to play gently. Our phrasing also makes a difference. There's a subtle but powerful difference between saying, "I want you to form a circle," versus "You will form a circle." Language has an important impact on transitions in the music room. I usually say something like, "When I say go, please form a circle, standing up, holding hands. Go." And then my students will follow those directions. I have a colleague who uses a magic word and changes it all the time. So she might say, "When I say taco, you will form a circle, standing up, holding hands. Burrito, nachos, taco. And so this gets a laugh out of our students and also has them waiting to hear the magic word. It's also important to use the student's name first when giving directions. I came across this bit of advice in material for special needs students, but I think it works great for all students. So instead of saying, use your left hand on top when you play the recorder, Tommy, you could say, Tommy, please use your left hand on top when you play the recorder. In the first example, Tommy missed everything you said until he got to his name. And in the second example, you got his attention first with his name so that he could hear the rest of your directions. These are just a few examples of things that I keep in mind when crafting my sentences in the music room, and hopefully being mindful of language can help us be more effective and efficient music teachers.
A little something more on music advocacy, which should be an ongoing process for all of us. Not just when programs seem to be at risk, but advocacy just because to help us spread the word about the benefits and the good that music education does for all students in our schools. And I do mean that, not just the ones that are part of our ensembles, but all students. In some way we can reach out to them musically through integrating the arts into classrooms and our music instructors being that kind of person. But advocacy is an ongoing process for us and something that we should all take very seriously. Mmea and NAFME has lots of materials on helpful ideas and hints about how we can better serve our schools, our communities through music advocacy processes and procedures. Mmea does an annual Jefferson City visit to talk with legislators and about the benefits and the aspects of how music affects and what effects music has on all of our students. And we do that annually. This year in 18 is March 15th, 2018, and we'll visit with our legislators in Jefferson City throughout the day. There's plenty of other opportunities within your own communities that you need to take advantage of, and there's plenty of resources to help you with help teachers with how that they can process and deal with those kind of aspects of advocacy. So if music teachers need more information on that, they're welcome to contact anyone here at Mmea, and we're able and ready to help you with those kind of aspects of advocacy.
I'm Lee Schaefer-Cutter, and I just wanted to give some tips and tricks of how I run my classroom. My lessons are typically 25 minutes, 30 minutes. That's how long my kids are in my room. I'm going to teach K-5. I've taught K-2 a lot, and so I feel like I'm really good with the younger kids. And so whenever I start my lesson, I typically have the kids come in, and we almost always go straight into something movement, and it's usually something that they don't have to work with anybody for the most part. They can just kind of be their own person and do their own thing, listen to the song, explore the room, explore some body levels, explore some shapes. They've been sitting for a long time sometimes, and so just letting them be themselves for a little bit. Then we come back to the carpet, and I will kind of start the bulk of my lesson, whatever it is that we're working on at that time. Then from that, we typically need to do some kind of creation or exploration. They need to take what I've just taught them and kind of play with it. So they might go and do some group work, and we might share out with the rest of the class. Just, just being creative and being kids. And then I try to, I'm not always successful, but I try to always close my lesson or close my time with my students with, a kind of a carpet activity or something where it brings us all back together. Whether it's a book or we're doing something with scarves or something where we look like we're unified. I did want to share a couple of resources with you just in case you are a new teacher and you may not have a lot of tools or a lot of access. I am very fond of the John Feyerabend books. These are just two of the ones that are in my classroom. You can buy them in a set. There's probably close to 12 now. So I would encourage you to look for those in your music magazines when you're building your library for your classroom. And then this is also a book that I got about 3 years ago. It's called I'm Growing Up, and it's from the New England Dancing Masters, which many of you probably already have a lot of their materials. But if you haven't explored I'm Growing Up, it's been a wonderful tool for my classroom, especially for my younger students, because it's some very short, like finger plays and stories, and it really allows for us to just create this really sweet ambiance in our classroom. So I hope I've given you some tips and tricks for your classroom with classroom management.
My name is Mark Lawley, and I teach at New Covenant Academy in Springfield, Missouri. And I've been asked to talk a little bit about lesson planning. And how do you know how to divide up the rehearsal? How do you know how to put together an effective plan? And I think an overarching thought that is easy to forget, but we definitely should remember, is that we are teachers of whatever the instrument is first. And with choral directors, we're teachers of voice. It's easy to be caught up with the pressure of performance to be a teacher of songs. And I don't think that's really what we're there for. So I try to spend a good chunk of my lesson planning teaching the voice. We know that warm-ups prepares the voice to sing, but a big part of warm-ups also prepare all the voices to sing together. So if we get the same idea of technique, I like to do something that relaxes the body, because as we know, a relaxed body creates a nice free sound. I like to do things that opens and relaxes the throat. I think you can hear in choral ensembles choirs who are aware of the throat, and definitely choirs who've not thought about that at all. So isolating the sound in the mask, flexibility, placement, that can be a word that not all voice teachers likes, because I know some teachers don't teach placement at all. But if for the age level that I teach with high school, if they get a concept of where they're trying to place the sound or feel the resonance or feel the buzz, that's very helpful. And it takes care of a lot of blend issues. I try to do a unison piece at the beginning of every rehearsal with a limited range, but a piece that lends itself to musical interpretation, so that we're singing really well together right off the bat. As far as student teachers go, and thinking about how, when I've worked with student teachers, what seems to be missing, and I think the number one thing would just be pacing, just keeping things moving along at a good pace and knowing when you need to move along in a certain aspect. I had a student teacher one time that had the class clap the rhythm over and over and over, but the class actually had the rhythm and the student teacher didn't. But they finally the student teacher got the rhythm and they got to move on. So I think that's a challenge. You know, I remember back to when I was a student teaching, and it's difficult to be aware of what you're doing, but just keeping track of where the class is with you, if they're staying fully engaged. Even if you have more to do with that particular piece or pronunciation, if you see that the engagement is lessening, that's definitely a sign to move forward.
The thing that I think that I do well in my classroom is first day procedures, having a seating chart already in place, but getting them in the door and within the first minute of class, making sure that they're singing, even on the first day of class. They're there to be able to sing, they're there to make music, and the syllabus can wait, the calendar can wait. They've got 5 or 6 other classes that they're going to be bored to tears on that first day. With going through procedures and going through rules and going through everything that the teacher needs to talk about. We're there to sing, we can talk rules later. If it's the beginning choir, teach them the warm-ups on that first day. Spend some time reviewing posture. Just talk about, like I said, general classroom procedures without having to outline those procedures. We just do it by singing. If it's an advanced class, review some of those warm-ups, and bottom line, get them singing in those first couple minutes.
These are my tips for class management in the elementary general music classroom. The first thing is to set clear expectations. Your students won't know what you want them to do unless you tell them clearly. And practice it. I spend the first few weeks practicing routines. I do that again in January so that my students know how I want things done, and we practice it until we get it right. The second thing is to document everything that happens. So in a lot of my students' cases, they come with a behavior chart where I can document specific incidents on that paper. I also keep private documentation for myself for things that happen. And then directly linked to that would be to communicate those things to the classroom teacher and also to the parents. I like to communicate in advance, early and often, and also communicate positive things as well as negatives. The main thing to remember with class management is that it's not personal or emotional. It's simply a breakdown of a system that you've established. So it's very matter of fact, and I try to remind myself to keep my tone of voice level and calm. It's just a matter of a choice that the student has made and the consequence that will come because of it. This is what works for me. Good luck finding what works for you in your classroom.
If there's something I could tell my younger self, it would be to figure out a way to make myself go to an Orff level or a Kodai level or a Dalcroze level or a world drumming level. Get some kind of instruction prior to entering the classroom. When you have that kind of information, it will help your classroom management, it will give you direction through your lessons, it will give you a progression, and it will make you so much more confident in what you're doing that you will be able to enjoy creating with your students. Another bit of advice would be to, at any time you can, go and observe other teachers, whether they're in your district, other music teachers. You could even observe other teachers in your building. Just watching other people teach and see some of the things that they do to manage their classroom and some of the language would be very beneficial to you. It was beneficial to me. So those are the two things that I would encourage: going and getting a level and finding someone to go watch and observe them teaching.
That I think is really important is to make sure that your group sounds different from piece to piece. That's one of my favorite things when I listen to a choir. As they go from piece to piece, do I hear a variety of tone colors? Do I hear dynamic contrasts? And for me, one of the quickest ways to get at that is to tell a story, to work with the entire ensemble to decide who is singing, why are they singing, what's the event that just happened that precipitated the song, who are you singing the song to? Where are you? Are you outside? Are you inside? Is it warm? Is it cold? What are you wearing? All of these things. The audience will have no idea what you're actually thinking, but they'll know that they're thinking something. And that connection is a really important one. The full investment of the performers creates a full investment from the audience, which is really very special. And sometimes one quick storytelling session in a rehearsal can get at the dynamic changes or the tone color that you've been looking for all along.
I think one of the most important things about what I do is the importance of trying to get people to understand that gesture can replace verbal instruction. So many times we, and I'm saying myself as my colleagues and students, we try to tell people what to do, to give words to instruct them, when it'd be a lot more efficient and effective if we would simply show them with our hands. This accomplishes several things. Number one, it's more interesting than hearing me talk. It's a lot more effective because it teaches people that the hands, the gestures, can actually communicate ideas. And number three, it keeps your rehearsal moving much more rapidly. Those are all positive effects, of course. So one practice I think that is kind of interesting to do, have you ever tried when you are doing rehearsal to say, I'm only going to say who should sing and where they should sing. Everything else has to be changed by hand signals. Somebody's singing the wrong note, look at them, tell them, do they go up or do they go down? Or if somebody else perhaps is singing too marcato, can I show them a legato gesture that might fix that, rather than saying, you know, sopranos, on measure 13 it seems like you are just being a little bit too... By then they're already someplace else worrying about a class or a relationship or something. So can we possibly use our gesture to communicate something in a more effective and actually a more professional manner?
One of the things I get asked most often is how do you take a small program and grow it into a big program? And so I think the cornerstone of that is having a vision and being able to articulate that vision to administration. And then being passionate with your students in articulating the vision so they also have buy-in to that as well. So one of the things that my staff and I think about in terms of that vision is a 2- and 4-year plan. We decide what do we want our 2-year goals to be and what do we want our 4-year goals to be. And then we take a step back and think, what are the financial ramifications of that? What are the pedagogical ramifications with that? What are the inventory ramifications of that? And what are the scheduling ramifications of that? Then we sit down with our administration and we present this 2- and 4-year vision in terms of here's what we need, here's what we want, and here's what we anticipate. And then every year we revisit that with them and show them how we're progressing along those goals. And through articulating that vision, through articulating those wants and needs and desires, we find that the administration is responsive, especially since we are communicating so early in advance. I think the big thing within that communication is understanding that any music department, whether it's band, choir, or theater, or any type of performing arts, is a small part of a very big picture. Often as music educators, we identify ourselves, we are so invested in our topic and in our students because we see them from a year in, year out basis. And so sometimes it can feel, if an administrator says no or says not right now, that they are not supporting us. It's certainly not the case. I've never met an administrator who simply doesn't want the best for our kids. And if we can communicate that with our administration, if we can communicate how our vision supports their vision and how we can work in a symbiotic relationship to better our students, and then I found that our administration is very, very receptive. Again, early communication of a strong and student-centered vision will ultimately produce wonderful results for your students. And through that, we can provide amazing opportunities for not only performance, but lifelong memories.
Talk about the importance of staying involved in advocacy at the government relations level. It's important for all educators to let not only your local administration and your local school board know what's going on with your program and the great successes that you have, but also tag your local legislator, your local senator or your congressman, and let them know the things that are going on. Maybe share a picture of your band or your choir someplace that's really unique. Send them a short little audio clip of something that's happened with your 6th grade choir that's doing something fantastic. Something else that I would urge you to do is to stay aware of what's happening at the state level. And I know everybody is extremely busy just trying to keep your head above water doing your job. But it's important to also be aware of the things that are going on. And if you have concerns, you can contact us with Mmea, or you can contact your legislator directly to let them know of your concerns. Or if you see something that needs to happen and needs to change, please contact us to let us know what's going on.
I want to talk to you guys today about time. In the world we live in, we are all about instant gratification. We want to immediately know the answer to something. So we pull out our web device and we Google our answer, or we go on Facebook and get on a group and start asking our friends or email somebody. And sometimes the answer is, it takes time. You have to wait and you have to have patience. With Tri-M, if you start a chapter, it's not going to be perfect overnight. Rome wasn't built in a day. It takes months, weeks, years even to get exactly the program you want. Tri-M is that way, and every music program is that way. Everything is that way. So don't get discouraged. Just give it time. Have patience and stick with it. Don't quit.
Hi, I'm Sheila, and I am going to tell you a few tricks on how to get kindergartners to sing the first day. Number one, my clown and giraffe They don't like to hear me when I sing or talk, so they're down inside. But when they come out, you can sing, and I'm going to be quiet because they don't like to hear me because they like to hear children sing. So you can either do it as a whole class, or you can pass it around, and those little guys will just sing their hearts out to these little animals and the clowns, and it's perfect for any time that you are working. Now, for my classroom management, which has worked phenomenal, it takes a little training, but we all need training, is bubble wrap. When I pop a bubble, I'm a little frustrated and somebody's not following the rules. But if you get a bubble and you never ask for one, because these are privileges, you get a bubble because you had a fantastic day. So go find some bubble wrap to make greatness happen in your class.
I think movement is an incredibly important part of every lesson, no matter if it's kindergarten all the way through 5th grade, middle school, high school. It helps get the brain and the blood flowing, and it helps get a little bit of focus when they first walk in. In my kindergarten classes, we always begin with exploration type movement activities. We have a lot of locomotor, non-locomotor moves. I allow them to create their own and share them and lead them in the class. When I'm working with locomotor movement and my children, we talk a lot about the different levels. High levels, medium levels, low levels. Body facing, direction, pathways. The more creative, the better. Some of my favorite movement publications that I love using are by the New England Dance Masters. They have activities that will help you through kindergarten, maybe even preschool, all the way up through middle school, including some high school activities. One of my other favorite publications is Teaching Movement and Dance by Phyllis Weichert. Her movement directions for the folk dances are incredibly detailed. She made up her own language, wrote them out, and even has a dictionary to help you work through all of her movement activities. A very valuable online resource is creativedance.org. There they have a tremendous amount of movement activities and descriptions, including the brain dance.
This has been a passion of mine. Mentoring has been a passion of mine for several years. I had over 30 student teachers during my career, and the one thing that they all have in common is when they get out, they struggle. We all have that problem. And I would urge any first-year teacher or any younger teacher to reach out, to find a mentor. You're teaching now because somebody, when you were in a music class, taught you. Somebody was a mentor to you when you were a student. And now it's your time to mentor other children. Now it's your time to take the lead. To do that, it does not come naturally to most people. You've prepared, you've been to college, you've done your work in classes, but now you're out and you're working, and it's different. It's a lot like swimming. You can read about swimming, you can watch people talk about swimming, and you can even watch people swim, but you don't know anything about what swimming's like until you actually do it. Teaching is the same way. You've got to get out there and you've got to do it. And so you take what tools you got in college, and then you contact people around you. Find somebody in your area who has a successful program with good values that you respect, and call them. Mmea offers a first-year mentoring program free of cost. It typically occurs the last weekend in September into the first weekend of October. It's an overnight one. This year it's going to be September 30th to October 1st. It is free of charge. All you have to do is pay the motel bill at Tantera and you get convention rates. Talk to your administration about PDC money, professional development money, to come down and do this. It's worth your time. We hire excellent teachers, successful teachers with excellent careers that can show you some tricks of the trade, resources, network. That's what's going to get you through. You're going to learn a lot your first year, and I always thought, and I've had several people tell me that after the first year they felt like they learned a lot more than they taught, just because it's such a different feeling being on that side of the classroom. Instead of being in a student's chair, you're now leading the class. You are the one that's building the teacher crop for next year's teachers. So I would encourage you to reach out. I am available. My address is on the Mmea website. We're going to have a list of resources up for you that you can contact in your area. We're building on that right now. But welcome to the profession.
Talk a little bit about encouraging our students to compose and arrange. I think that we have a tremendous opportunity as educators of young people to encourage this, and I think it's something that has become a really interesting facet of our organization, not just as conductors, but bringing in that other kind of layer of music making in composition. So I think there are a few things that we can do to encourage young composers. First of all, I think improvisation is something that we don't do, especially in the singing world, in the choir world. It's something that our students don't always get to experience. So I think if any opportunity for students to improvise with their voice or with their instrument is going to help them see that composition isn't scary, that it's something that anyone can do and try. Secondly, I think encouraging young composers and even older composers to begin with the basics, begin simply. I always tell young composers to start with arranging, and not to arrange a piece in, at least a choral piece, in 8 parts with a lot of divisi. Start with 2 parts, start with 3 parts, and see what you can do with the song. That is maybe a folk song or that somebody else has written before you. See what you can do with just 2 parts, 3 parts. Start with that basic idea and really put what you want on the paper, put what you mean on the paper, rather than just kind of putting it all out there at once. I think another thing as conductors that can be done is allowing a space in your rehearsals to work on some of those student compositions, even if it's just once a semester or once a year, to have a day where students can bring their compositions in, whether they're complete or just a fragment of a piece, and play through or sing through those compositions for those students and let them really experience what it's like to have their piece performed, but also just to see how things work if something is actually singable or playable. I think that's something so valuable that we can do for our students. And then I think also anytime a student who is doing composition brings a piece to you as a conductor, I think that's a tremendous opportunity to look at it from your point of view as a conductor and to show that student, you know, you really need to mark a comma here, a breath mark here, or hold it over. What do you really want? When I'm looking at it as a conductor, here's the information that I need to know. Mark that in the score. I think that's always been really helpful to me and could be really helpful to our students. So I think just a couple of simple ways that we can help to encourage young composers to just go for it. That's how I started. I just went for it, and then it has led me to a career I never thought that I would have. So you never know what you do or say for a student, what it will lead to for them.
I've been asked by Mmea to talk with you about what DESE does for you, how you can make use of DESE, And a couple of things come to mind. Number one is that you can visit the DESE website and look on the Fine Arts page for any updates for policy decisions or curriculum decisions or anything that is within the realm of the arts. I usually am able to keep that web page updated. And to that end, there's two things that I would like for you to keep in mind. Number one thing are art standards. And the new art standards that we are about to adopt or adapt here in Missouri are very closely related to the National Core Art Standards. And as a music educator, I think that if music is going to be a progressive subject area, we need to understand that our obligation as a music teacher extends beyond just our music classroom and extends into the realm of the other content areas. And the new standards that we have are uniquely positioned to help us in that endeavor. So for instance, how does what I teach relate to the social studies classroom, to the math classroom, to the science classroom, and or any other subject area, and even the arts? Like, how does my subject area relate to visual arts or dance or theater? I think that we're obligated to reach out to people who want to stay siloed in their classrooms and say that, hey, music is there for everyone. Music is something that can transform people's lives. I mean, after all, look what it did for me as your music teacher. And to that end, seek out what arts integration is and how you can make arts integration work in your classroom. On the DESE website, there is a document called Missouri Guide to Arts Integration. Review that, perhaps contact me if you wish to talk about it some more, and I can give you some advice. There also on that website are located some crosswalks between ELA, social studies, math, science, and the arts for you to take a look at.
I'm here today to talk about energy and energy in the classroom and why energy in the classroom is probably the most important part of a high schooler's day. If you can't come to the rehearsal fired up and ready to go, how can you expect your students to be fired up and ready to go? There's a lot of thought process that goes into it because there are days that you may not feel like you're full of energy and you're ready to go, but that's still something that you need to muster and find ways to come around that and make it all happen and be magical in the moment. So there's all kinds of things that you can do to get yourself ready to walk into a rehearsal room with high school kids who are already awesome. And you go in there and you have just the greatest time of your life and you put everything else away except for that moment and that focus and what you're doing to make their lives even better. The key to it all too, I believe, is also staying in good physical shape, because without that, you can't muster up with the energy that you need to match what they're going to give you in a rehearsal. So how important is energy in a rehearsal? It is incredibly important, because without it, you're not going to get anything accomplished with those students. They need that energy, they'll feed off of that energy, and that energy then and enthusiasm will just create this wonderful magic throughout the group. You have to bring it every day, or students won't bring it without your inclination of having great focus and great energy and wonderful experiences.